Welcome. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Quantum Alignment Show. And thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to share some really new information that I've never shared before, that I've been contemplating a lot. So it's always exciting for me to share this stuff because, well, first of all, I get to see, okay, is this going to land? There's always that. And it always gives me some excitement to share different twists and takes on human design. We talk a lot about human design sort of being a system that if you just simply follow the basics of the system, you'll eventually arrive at a magically awesome life. And while there's some truth to that, I think one of the things that I rally against a lot is that, and this, don't get depressed about this, this is not hard, it's just, it is important to understand that human design expresses and shares the mechanics of how you operate, tells you a lot about who you are, what you're here to do. It tells you a lot about your gifts, your strength, your potential. But sometimes to live that out, you have to clean up some of those places where maybe you learned that it wasn't okay for you to be who you are, or that there are aspects of yourself that maybe weren't acceptable for some reason and you had to kind of learn where to hide them or put them away. Or maybe because you're very sensitive, you've become conditioned to keeping aspects of yourself sort of more private because you don't want to risk the vulnerability of putting yourself out there and experiencing the blowback or the pushback. The bottom line is, while human design explains a lot, it doesn't always give you the full story of what you need to do to create a life that's more in alignment with the true story of who you are. But, this is a really powerful but, there's a code for healing and for aligning in the chart. And today, when we explore in the conversation we're going to have in the Quantum Alignment Show today, the truth behind truth, I'm going to share with you where some of the code for healing, and in particular, healing your self-worth, lies in the chart. I think this is really exciting information because I'll tell you that in the 20 plus years that I've done human design and the 35 plus years that I've worked as a life coach, that having a simple code for how to heal certain parts of our own essence, things like self-esteem or self-worth or self-love, these are big issues that sometimes trip us up. And trying to tackle it in sort of a systematic way can be tricky. So what's really lovely about the chart is that it actually gives us kind of a Rolodex or a code, different archetypes and different angles that we can work with to support us in creating a higher expression of self-love, self-acceptance, and self-worth. So today we're going to be looking at that. We're going to be looking at that in the context of why is that so important, and how does that impact your life if you aren't living true to the real value of who you are, and what are some things you can start to do today to start supporting yourself in taking those actions that you need to take, perhaps, to bring the expression of who you are back into the alignment with your authentic self. So without further ado, let's get started and let's explore the truth about truth. So when we look at the human design chart, it is a blueprint or a template for the human experience and the human condition. If we look at the chart as a blueprint for the human story, and that's really what we're going to do today. So even though you might have your chart out, don't get too caught up today as we talk about this, about do I have this gate, do I not have this gate, because that's not really what it's about. First of all, just a gentle reminder, we all have all of the chart, just like you all have the entire human genome in your cells. You all have all of the chart within your energy field. The difference between definition and openness is not have and don't have. It's that definition has consistency. That's an energy you're going to experience in a consistent way. Openness, the things that are white in your chart, are energies that you'll experience in a variety of different ways, but you will experience it all because you're a human being. If we look at the chart as a blueprint or a template for what's possible for humanity, we see that the highest expression of being human is that you are fully engaged with your life and you are joyful, that you evolve from the past, you learn from the past, and ultimately we're designed to leave the past behind, not drag it forward with us. And because of that, we also have the freedom, by virtue of our design, to redefine the story of who we perceive ourselves to be each and every day if we want to. We are designed to consciously and consistently express our authentic potential and make our unique contribution to the world. And by the way, in case you forgot, you, being you are the contribution to the world. It's not what you do. And I think we get so caught up, particularly in our material understanding of the world, that we think it's about what we do. It's not about what you do, it's about who you are. You being the fullest expression of who you are is the contribution you're here to give to the world. We are designed to take our direction from spirit and ultimately use our life as an individuated aspect of the divine that serves something greater than our individual self, something bigger, maybe not greater because you're great, but something bigger than your individual self. You're here to serve the cosmic plan or divine order or whatever word you want to call it, God. You put in whatever word feels good to you. In the highest expression of being human, we're designed to be physically vital, to fully occupy and embody our bodies, and to really nurture and love and take care of these physical forms that port us around all day long. We are designed to receive, to have all the resources we need to fulfill our destiny. And we are ultimately designed to take actions in the world that not only serve ourselves and sustain ourselves, but are compassionate contributions for the greater good of the world. In other words, we're designed to feel good being who we are and doing what we came here to do. And we're also actually designed to be nice to each other, which I think sometimes we forget. So, in the course of our life, we oftentimes experience pain, and that can be physical pain, financial pain, health pain, relationship pain, career pain, creative fulfillment pain, your relationship with source pain, spiritual pain. Pain is not it's a symptom. It's not a cause, it's a symptom. And when we really get that when we experience pain of any kind, it's a symptom that's telling us something important, and we really engage with our pain to discover what is the cause of this pain. I'm not saying don't heal, don't address the pain. It's very hard to figure out what's the cause of pain when you're in pain. So, definitely if you need to do whatever you need to do to get out of pain so that you can move to a higher order of consciousness and tackle what's underneath the pain. So don't suffer. And definitely not, I'm telling you, don't suffer. And if you're not addressing the actual pain and ameliorating the edges of the pain, at least, you're going to potentially kick yourself into suffering. And you're not designed to suffer. There's no gate of suffering in the chart. So tackle your pain. But when we experience pain, we really have to explore what is the meaning underneath the pain. There are lots of ways that we can experience pain, and these are listed down below here. What I would say are the 5 most symptoms of personal or interpersonal pain that I see in my clients, beyond just the obvious of physical pain. So sometimes pain manifests as confusion about your life purpose and direction. Sometimes pain will manifest as feeling nervous or even paralyzed around making decisions. Sometimes pain can manifest as fear or anxiety that keeps you from doing what you really want to be doing. Sometimes pain is expressed when we're not being authentic or we're compromising what we want in our life. Or sometimes if we question our value and our lovability, we experience some kind, or we create some kind of pain in our life. The most important thing I want you to remember about pain is that it's the barometer that tells you how close or how far you are from expressing your true self. And in the work that I've done with people as a coach, as a human design specialist, and as a quantum alignment system specialist, is that the more your life isn't reflecting your authentic self, meaning the greater the distance there is between your reality and your true self, the greater amount of pain. Pain becomes the barometer that's telling you how aligned are you with your authentic self, Or how misaligned are you, perhaps, with your authentic self? Pain, of course, can be a powerful teacher. It's life-changing. Sometimes it's even life-saving. It's a life-saving messenger or a life-changing messenger, and ultimately can be the catalyst for deep healing and alignment. As I said, the more someone lives off the chart, meaning the more distance there is between who you are and what your life looks like, the greater the potential for pain, suffering, and even in some cases, the chance for physical illness. Human design shows us that each and every one of us is here to contribute to the world in a unique way, and that we're each uniquely hardwired. But unfortunately, most of us are taught that there's only one way to be successful, healthy, to make a meaningful contribution to the world. We learn to hide who we really are, to compromise our desires, and to give up what's most natural to us in order to be successful or be healthy and do it. We try to do it in this rigid way that we taught, and it really doesn't work for a lot of us. The bottom line is this: it takes a lot of energy to maintain an identity that isn't true to who you are. What happens a lot of times is when we encounter situations or circumstances that cause us to feel like it's not okay to be who we are, we tend to form what I like to call protective identities, false identities or should-based identities that cause us to act in a certain way to protect the truth of who we are, or to deflect sometimes pain from the truth of who we are. Every time you say yes to something you want to say no to, every time you try to be something or someone you're not, every time you make a choice that feels wrong, even though your logical mind is telling you something different, every time you give up a dream or a desire, every time you nurture someone else that costs to yourself, every time you choose circumstances that actually take you away from your joy and your authentic self, not only does it feel yucky, you actually use an enormous amount of energy. When you use your vital life force energy to maintain a facade and inauthentic choices, you will eventually burn out and possibly even sabotage everything in your life, including your health and your most intimate partnerships. As I said, I'm making this point here. I hope you're getting it, because I've made it very firmly now several times. The greater disconnect from your authentic self, the greater the pain in your life. Your pain is telling you that you're off course and helping you realize that you need some serious course correction. So we're going to talk today about course correction, all right? What you're experiencing right now in your life, if you are in pain, is the sum total of every choice that you've made in your life. How you're hardwired energetically is going to influence the kinds of choices you make and what you need to choose to express your authentic self. So certainly living true to your human design is part of bringing yourself back into alignment. And certainly the easiest way to do that is to follow your strategy for your human design type. But I'm not going to really talk about that today either. But file that away as thing number one that you can begin to do. But there's other things you can do too. And as I said, the chart itself contains within it codes for things, ways in which we can be, actions we can start to take to begin to deepen our experience of personal alignment in our life and in the expression of who we are. So to do that, to really start to examine where is the code for this healing and how do we get to it, we're going to start with the exploration of where does truth live in the human design chart. And when I say truth, I'm really talking about integrity. The gate 26, coming off the bottom left-hand side of the will center. And again, please don't panic like, oh, I don't have this. I'm not designed to be in integrity. It's not about have and don't have. You either have it colored in or you have it white, but you got it. And if you have it defined, it means you deal with this energy in a very consistent way. If you have it open, it means you have a lot of variety of experiences around this, but we all have all the chart. So the gate 26 is the place where it's actually called the gate of the trickster, which is the opposite of integrity, right? It's actually a place where in the low expression of this archetype, we can be tricksters, we can lie, we can be tricky. This is the place in the chart where the used car salesman lives. The archetype of the used car salesman is in the gate 26. And there's a lot of interesting stuff for us to learn from the archetype of the used car salesman. the first thing that we usually learn from the used car salesman is that when we stand in the presence of the guy in the plaid suit trying to sell us the broken down piece of junk, right? Our internal BS detector goes off, right? You know, on some level that, ew, this doesn't feel right, right? Something is off. And there's certainly an enormous amount of potential for intuition in this energy that we all carry. We all know on some level, usually, unless we talk ourselves out of it or we're too darn nice by design, we all know when we bump up against that stuff that feels out of integrity or out of alignment. I think, honestly, this is why so many of us hate sales or we hate being sold to. Because oftentimes, if you're not in alignment with what you're selling, if you are out of integrity with what you're selling, or you're out of integrity with the value of what you're selling, then the sales process itself feels inauthentic and we sense it. We feel it. It doesn't feel good to us and we don't want to be exposed to it. Now, we're talking about this strictly in the context of sales. This is true in your whole life. We all are sort of interestingly hardwired to sense when things are off. And it's not an articulate energy, so it's not an energy that's necessarily going to give you a lot of words or language. It's just a feeling. And I do want you all, whether you are a manifestor, projector, generator, manifesting generator, reflector, to recognize that no matter what your chart says, that that's your authority or whatever, blah, 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 no matter what your chart says in terms of your type and your authority, you have the gate 26. And those gut level intuitive, something feels off feelings, or those gut level, I think I should be doing this. My head is telling me I should be doing this. This isn't feeling like this is really what I want to do. This is that place where that comes from. And that pulse, that icky feeling that's like, oh, I know I should do this. I know I'm obligated to do this. I know I have to do this for whatever reason. I've talked myself into thinking this is what I need to do. But that internal place of feeling like, oh, I really don't want to do this. And I'm having to muster an awful lot of will to force myself into doing it. That's your inner integrity system talking to you. And it's telling you, woo, hey, this isn't right for us. We don't want to do this. This doesn't feel aligned with who we are. When you bump up against this feeling consistently, what it also sometimes creates in us is avoidance, procrastination, and self-sabotage, because your higher self is totally clued into, hey, this sucks, I don't want to do it. And so it's creating all these very interesting ways for you to avoid having to actually do what you committed or you said you were going to do. So this gate itself has a pulse. It has an intuitive pulse that lets you know, usually, that you're either on or off course with what's right for you. Now, I say that I do want to lovingly and gently suggest that we are probably, many of us, probably most of you, and this isn't your fault, so this isn't about beating yourself up. This is just about gaining awareness that we are so trained to go against that pulse. When you think about this for a minute, think about this for a minute. I'm going to get out of here and just talk to you for a second, straight on. Think about what happened when you were in school and it was a beautiful day outside and the sun was shining and the windows were open. This was back in the day when we could still open windows at school. We can't do that in some places in America, which blows my mind, right? The windows were open and you were in the back row of the classroom looking outside going, oh, my spirit just wants to go outside and swing, right? And your teacher was like, nope, it's math time. Get out your math book, get out your pencil, pay attention and focus, right? And you were like, oh, I don't want to, this doesn't feel right. But what choice did you have, right? You couldn't buck the system at 7, 8, 9 years of old age. What are you going to do? Get up and protest and march out in solidarity with your other fellow students? Probably not, because there were consequences, right? To not stuffing down that intuitive place of alignment. And we got used to that to a certain degree. And while, you know, we could have this really long conversation about systems and logic and how do we, you know, imprint people and get people to go along and then talk about being authentic and alignment as adults and that disconnect. we do have to explore the idea that in a collective cultural setting, at least in our lives, many of us have learned to really push down that feeling of this isn't right for me, right? We learn to go along and get along. And while I'm going to say there's probably some points in your life where maybe that's appropriate, there's also a recovery sometimes that we have to go through to allow ourselves to hear and sense and feel that inner warning system and go, okay, something's off here. And as a sovereign adult, I'm going to start giving myself permission to, at the very least, listen to this feeling, right? Listen to this feeling so that you can start giving yourself permission to follow that feeling. Integrity has a lot of different definitions. This is also the place where we have the energy or the archetype for moral integrity. So when we look at what violates our personal integrity, if we behave in ways that violate our own moral code, or we feel conflicted about following a moral code that does or doesn't suit us, then our integrity or our alignment can also be violated. You see this in a very extreme way sometimes in veterans who have PTSD, who, by virtue of going to war, maybe did terrible things that violated their own moral code, but they had to, maybe because they were under orders or it was wartime. So here's a place where integrity can be potentially threatened. Physical integrity is also here. When something happens to your physical body, when your bodily integrity is violated in some way, it can also cause us to create protective identities that take us out of the alignment with our true self and cause us to live in an inauthentic, traumatized way, basically. We can have identity integrity issues here. If you in any way, shape, or form have an experience that causes you to buy into a belief system that says it's not okay for you to be who you are, then we start to have challenges here in this gate 26 energy. There's also energetic integrity here, meaning if you make commitments to do things that you don't have the energy for, and you are pushing with willpower that you maybe don't really have, you are out of energetic integrity here, and it's depleting, and it's exhausting, and it's difficult to maintain and sustain those kinds of decisions and choices. And we have resource integrity here, meaning, do you have not only the energy, but the material resources or the time for whatever it is that you've committed to? We oftentimes see, because this is connected to the will center, which we're going to talk about in just a second, which is this part of the open will center has an unconscious energy drive to try to prove its value when it's not operating in a healthy way. What we oftentimes do is overcommit with resources we don't have, and that's not just energy. Sometimes that's money, sometimes that's time, sometimes that's who knows what that could be. You can fill in a lot of gaps with that. We overcommit with resources we don't have in an attempt to prove our value in some way, shape, or form, and we burn ourselves out because we don't have the resources that we're promising to contribute to the equation. The biggest thing that we see here when we talk about integrity, and again, when we're looking at this from an archetypical perspective, integrity means whole. If you look at the word integrity from an engineering perspective, a structure that is in integrity is solid, it's structurally sound, it holds up, it bears weight, right? When we experience any kind of violation of these kinds of integrities that are in the gate 26, we get what I'll call structural integrity issues in our self-expression. And those structural integrity issues in our self-expression are really experienced by us as trauma. When we're looking at the gate 26, we have to look at trauma. And we have to look at the role that trauma plays in us expressing our authentic self. Depending on where you look, there are many United States government research studies on trauma and what the percentage of people who experience trauma. In a study that I recently read that was done by I don't remember who did it. I'll have to go back and look at it. If somebody wants the citations, I'll go find it for you. But it was a study that looked at trauma in children. And they guesstimated, well, they didn't guesstimate, they actually measured. They measured that the reported incidence of trauma in older children was 60%. In other words, this study said that 60% of children, older children, had experienced some sort of trauma in their life, and that 25% of those children had experienced some sort of physical trauma or had been witness to some sort of physical trauma. That's more than half of older children had already experienced some sort of integrity challenge. Over the past couple of years, I've been teaching a series of programs called the Master Alignment Programs, and I've taken the quantum alignment system, which is an integrated approach using energy psychology, subtle body therapies, human design, and the concept of 9 core archetypes that contribute to resiliency. I've been taking people through a 9-part focused programs, helping people align with resiliency in specific areas, including finances, body image, relationships, and just general resiliency sequences. And what I have found in my work, in going back and interviewing people and surveying people after they've completed the full sequence of the quantum alignment system master alignment programs, is that the people that I have worked with, you guys, our community, the people in our community who report feeling or experienced feeling traumatized or having experienced trauma, there we go, got that sentence out, was actually 85%. So 85% of our clients in the last 2 years who have gone through the master alignment programs with the quantum alignment system have reported themselves as having experienced in some way, shape, or form trauma in their lives. Now, if we start working with every one of us, not every one of us is going to have cataclysmic, horrific kinds of traumas that we normally think of as trauma. And I want to redefine maybe perhaps the definition of trauma a little bit, because I think it's a much more significant issue than we have really allowed ourselves to process in our collective consciousness. Science, as a rule, will generally define trauma, and this is general, and you'll find different definitions no matter where you look, but trauma is an event that causes a perceived threat to survival, that trauma is an event that overwhelms coping capacity, producing a sense of powerlessness, that trauma produces feelings of isolation and aloneness, and that trauma is any kind of event that violates expectations. I would like to reintroduce a new definition for trauma, and I would say that trauma is any event that causes someone to question their lovability and their value. And if you think about the fact that we start off in our lives as children with very literal, sometimes even, very literal perspectives in the world, that when we are experiencing the world as children, if we are not in an environment that celebrates our uniqueness, that allows us to be the full expression of who we are, where we feel loved and accepted and valued for who we are, that it can create varying degrees of trauma. Now, this isn't about blaming your parents, because I don't even want to go there. I have a lot of kids. I know they blame me. So it's not about blaming your parents. This is about exploring where perhaps we need to push against the perceived trauma of our existence in order for us to deepen our commitment to our expression of our authentic self. It is, we see in the chart, through sometimes experiencing struggle, not suffering, there's no suffering in the chart, but through our experience of struggle, through wrestling with and struggling with a thought, a concept, an idea, an aspect of who we are, we actually grow and evolve. And I do think that some of the trauma that we experience in our lives is intentional. We put it there on a soul level because it's part of our soul curriculum to help us push against our own selves and deepen our own self-mastery, our own understanding of our true value in the world. And again, please know that I work a lot with very traumatized people, and I am not poo-pooing in any way, shape, or form your experience if you've had trauma. And I'm also not in any way denying that your perception of your trauma. And certainly as we go through this material, if you feel that you have a deeper level of trauma that you are in need of support with, please check out on the Quantum Alignment System page, this is quantumalignmentsystem.com. Please check out our Quantum Alignment System practitioners. We have some very highly trained people who are very skilled at helping you get back in touch with the full expression of your authentic self in a very aligned and resilient way. And I'm also saying that on different levels, we are probably all somewhat traumatized. I think coming to Earth is a hard thing to do. And that part of our journey as Earthlings is to reclaim and then to defend our right place in the cosmic plan and our right place in the world. And that there's value in that journey of discovering and reclaiming your right place. There's healing in that journey, and there's empowerment in that journey. And I do think that it's a journey that is sometimes challenging and can even sometimes be painful, but also a very vital and very important journey for all of us to explore and engage in. You are here for a reason, and you are here to occupy a place on the cosmos, in the divine order, that no one else can occupy. And the more you can move yourself towards fulfilling that place, the more ease and the less pain you'll have in your own life. And ultimately, the more you'll create space for others to do the same. And I do believe that this is work that is some of the most vital work that we can do in the world right now, not only for ourselves, but for the evolution of humanity. So let's talk for a minute about, in the chart, what calibrates integrity? How do we get ourselves back into integrity with who we are? The most important energy that we have to explore in the context of integrity, and the quality of energy that most influences the choices we make that either take us into integrity or out of integrity with ourselves, is our self-worth. Self-worth, self-value is the energy that is generated in the will center. It's the theme that's carried in the will center. And most of us, in some way, shape, or form, struggle with self-worth. Again, going back to the surveys that I've taken of my students and my clients, 90% of my clients report that they struggle with self-worth. Knowing the value of who you are and holding that value and making choices in alignment with that value. This is a big, big thing for people. And this is a big enough thing for people that because this center isn't just about willpower and self-worth, it's the place in the chart where we have the energy to transform things into material expression. So it's a place where your sense of value, your own sense of value, your self-worth gets translated into material value, i.e. money and opportunities and circumstances. That when our self-worth is hurting, our ability to be fully actualized and embodied in the material world also hurts. And there is a very strong correlation between your self-worth, your sense of your own value, and the money. Just the money. Let's not even talk about the other stuff. Just the money you're allowing yourself to create in your life. It's a very, very interesting correlation to pay attention to. So let's look at what's the code in the chart that encourages us or gives us some very simple things to begin to do to change the point of calibration of our self-worth. When we look at the gates on the will center, and again, you all have this in your chart. You either have it defined or you have it open, but you all have this. So don't start panicking if you're like, I don't have this. You have it. You just either have it colored in or white, but you have it. These 4 gates give us pathways to begin the exploration of creating more value in our lives through our choices and through our actions. This is actually really, really simple. And I love this. In fact, let me get out of here for a second because I want you to see this. I want to see you. Well, I can't see you, but let's pretend like we can. This is really, really simple stuff. Now, again, if you have significant trauma, this might not be enough, all right? So please know that if you start exploring here and you think you have significant trauma, this might not be enough. And we have a tendency to want to make the idea of how do I recover my self-worth or how do I learn to love myself? We want this to be, I think because we're programmed in a way, maybe to make things complicated, we want it to be complicated. There's actually a lot of simplicity in the code that the chart gives us to at least initiate us into the process of walking in a new way that helps you align more deeply with the value of who you really are. So we're going to start first with the gate 21. The gate 21 in traditional human design is sometimes called the gate of the treasurer. It is the place where we have the energy to manage resources, including money. So if you're in relationship with someone who has the gate 21, you might find that they're very, very strict with their budget, for example. This is the energy to be able to manage resources and even allocate them in a sustainable way so that the resources last over time. This can, in its low expression, be an energy about control. And sometimes people who have this energy defined in their chart, that means if you have it colored in your chart, you might find that you have a theme of control versus letting go in your life. And that part of your soul curriculum, embodied in your human design, is about learning what you need to let go of and learning what you need to control. When we look at this as a place for healing value, what we see is that this is a place where we have the potential for self-management. That the will center is part of your identity. It's where your individual human story, your ego self lives. The ego is designed to serve the higher self and to serve its right place in the cosmic plan. This energy of self-management means simply this, that you have the ability as part of healing the energy that you're carrying around your value to control your thoughts and your actions. Now, I am very aware that this sometimes is stuff that you have to do with baby steps. I used to teach a parenting class, and in the parenting class that I taught, one of the things that I taught parents to do is to change the way you speak with your children, to use empowered language with your children. And there was a very predictable cycle that people would go through when they began the process of changing the way they spoke to their children. And usually the first good step in knowing that they were making progress towards changing the way that they spoke to their children was the head banging phase, where you go, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. I know I wasn't going to say that. Why did I say that? Oh, in hindsight, you'd be very upset with, why did I just say that, right? That was phase 1. In phase 2, the parents started to sound like this. Right? They'd have a really hard time saying anything because they knew they couldn't say what they used to say habitually all the time to their kids, but they didn't quite have access to the new way of saying it, and so it left them sort of stumbling to find the right words. You might find that as you begin this process of looking at the code of aligning your value with the true value of who you are, that you go through those similar phases where in hindsight you're like, oh, why did I say that to myself? That was a terrible thing to say to myself, right? And as you move into finding a new way of communicating about yourself and managing your own energy, that you might find that in the beginning or in phase 2, you're kind of going, "La, la, 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 la," and you don't quite know what to say, but you'll figure it out. You will eventually get to phase 3 where you will build a new neural pathway around how to effectively manage yourself, your identity, your energy, and your sense of value. So, an affirmation for you to explore for this gate is I control my thoughts and my actions. I don't need to be in control of others. I use my energy to manage myself and trust that the universe will supply all the serendipitous encounters and magic necessary to sustain me in every way. The biggest code in this gate 21 is that it embodies the value of self generosity. That we are invited through the gate 21 to give freely and generously to ourselves. And that means we give ourselves the resources, because this is very much about resources. We give ourselves the resources to take care of and nurture ourselves. Now, resources can be you take the money, the financial, material resources, and you invest them in yourself. And that can be something as important as investing maybe in getting extra support around healing any wounds you might have in your integrity. It can mean you're generous with yourself, with the language you use for yourself and the environments that you place yourself in. Ask yourself right now, take a minute as we have this conversation, and you look at the life that you've created for yourself. Are you embodying self-generosity? Is your environment generous to you? Are you putting yourself in an environment that gives back to you as much as you give it? Are you creating for yourself pauses and breaks and time for sustenance in your regular patterns of living? The will center has built into it a need for rest. Are you resting adequately? Are you taking care of yourself first? Are you being generous with yourself? So there's an exploration for you to really go on with this. Are you being generous with yourself? Write that down and take it into your weekend with you through journaling or whatever, and then explore. Are you being generous with yourself? And is there more that you could be giving yourself to demonstrate not only to the universe and to others, but to yourself how precious you are? Think about value. This is the center for value. What do you do with something that's valuable, that's precious? How do you nurture it? How do you take care of it? You treat something valuable very differently than something you don't think has any value. So move yourself out of this I'm not valuable, I can wait till later place, perhaps, where you might have yourself stored, into this place where you recognize that there's preciousness here. This preciousness that is me, that is this once in a lifetime cosmic event that I am occupying and living, that is is an event that's never happened before, that will never happen again, and it's precious. How would you give to yourself differently if you saw how precious you are? The second code for healing self-worth and changing the nature of how you show up in the world and healing any integrity issues comes from the gate 40. The gate 40 is a gate of aloneness, but it's also a gate of community. And the energy of the gate 40 says that you take care of yourself first, because in the sustenance and the care of who you are, through rest and renewal, you fill your own cup and you have the ability to give more back to others. And you don't simply just give back to others, you actually create, through your interactions with others, healthy agreements. So let me walk through this with you guys for a minute. If you are exhausted and depleted, if you don't get enough time, alone time, and some of us have different needs for alone time than others. So let's think about this in the context of, well, let me go back to parenting because it's a good reference point. If you're a parent and you've got kids and maybe they're little and you don't get any time to yourself to connect with yourself, to meditate, to journal, to eat Cheetos and watch Netflix, whatever you need to do, right? If you don't get that self-renewal time, it actually impacts the way you show up in your relationships, right? And what happens to us, not just in our parenting relationships, even in our intimate partnerships, in our marriages, or in our other partnerships, if we go into that partnership with a cup half filled or an empty cup, what happens a lot of times is we put demands on our partner to fill our cup for us, right? And we create unhealthy conscious or unconscious agreements that can create self-sabotage patterns in our partnerships. And then we think the partnership is the problem, right? And we start looking at all the different ways our partner's not filling our needs, and they're not doing this for me, and they're not doing that for me, and they're not filling this need, right? When in fact, you yourself aren't filling your own needs first. So how can you be making a healthy agreement when you don't have anything to make an agreement with? To create a healthy community for yourself, or healthy intrapersonal support for yourself. Interpersonal support for yourself, sorry. Interpersonal support for yourself, you have to have your own cup full. Otherwise, you don't have the ability to go into a relationship and make good, healthy agreements. You're going to go in with hidden agendas. You're going to go in with blaming and sabotage. You're going to go in and maybe overgive because you're hoping that if you overgive, you'll get the same back in return. We do all kinds of crazy unconscious machinations here in this energy when we are not resting and renewing our own energy. So an affirmation for us to explore here is, I'm a powerful being who honors my need for rest and renewal in order for me to be fully present to all of my relationships. I honor myself. That's the code here in this gate. I honor myself and I take care of myself so that my energy is sustainable. In the next gate, and we've already looked at this gate a little bit, you know we have authenticity and integrity here in the gate 26. When we look at the manifestation of this in an affirmation, we see that here we have the potential to speak and act with authentic integrity and to share our hearts freely. Your affirmation is, I speak and act with authentic integrity and I share my heart freely. My words and choices are representations of my heart and my value. The code that we see here is guarding the tongue. And when I say guarding the tongue, I'm not just talking about being mindful of the language you use for yourself, about yourself, and about others. I'm also talking about the language you use about yourself in your head. How are you talking about yourself? Is the language you are using in integrity with the truth of who you are? Are your choices in integrity with the truth of who you are? When we look at guarding the tongue, we're looking at choices and words and acts that claim and defend value and honor, your value and honor, and the value and honor of others. This is, again, very much like the gate 21, the energy of self-management, where we're not out spending resources wildly, where we're taking good care of ourselves, we're managing our energy. This is, again, a place of self-regulation, which is the real root of willpower. It's not about the willpower to go on a diet or the willpower to exercise. It's the will to control the way in which you express this individuated aspect of who you are. And the control here is not about controlling by shutting down. It's about managing so that you are placing yourself in a situation or an energy that reflects the highest value of the truth of who you are. So being mindful of the language you use and the choices you make around yourself and others, and the value of who you are and the value of others. Last but certainly not least, when we look at the code for healing integrity in the chart, we see the gate 51, the gate of initiation. The gate 51 can sometimes be called the gate of shock. In traditional human design, this is a place where we sometimes experience shocking experiences or unexpected events, and those unexpected events serve the function of causing us to have to surrender to something that feels more powerful than our individual self. It causes us sometimes to have to accept circumstances that maybe we can't control or change. It causes us to become, through this acceptance, initiated into the understanding that we are here to serve something bigger or greater than our individual selves. It's this place where our ego metaphorically dies and emerges in service to our higher selves. This 51 energy is all about connecting to spirit and recognizing that we are so valuable and so precious that we deserve and we are worthy of having a deep connection with spirit as part of our life purpose, as part of setting the tone and the direction for our lives. And it's a place of recognizing that because it's not just about you. You know, your life isn't just about you. That's being egotistical. It's about understanding that your life is an intimate, integral part of the cosmic plan, and that your life is a place where spirit expresses through you. You're that precious. You are so valuable because you are a vehicle for spirit. In the energy of this gate 51, we discover that we are courageous, steadfast, and open to the expression of spirit through ourselves, and that we use all of our life experiences as catalysts to help us grow and evolve and to take our right place of service to spirit. This is the place where, when we look at the code for what's necessary to heal value and to heal integrity, that this is the code for humility. Humility teaches us that you have a unique role in the evolution of humanity. You have a vital and irreplaceable place in divine order, and that you have a right place that you are designed to occupy. And that we know, we sense, we talk a lot about people who take up too much space as being egotistical, right? When somebody comes in with, you know, this swagger that you know is a swagger that they've put on because they are trying to overcompensate for their low self-worth. You see that a lot in the news, right? Or in the world. Most of us don't have that problem. Most of us have the opposite problem, where we're playing too small. We're not taking up enough space in our right place in the cosmic plan, and we hold ourselves back. We compress ourselves. We contract ourselves instead of allowing ourselves to expand into our right place in the cosmic order. So I invite you to explore, through the value of humility, how much space are you willing to allow yourself to take up? And are you allowing yourself to take up enough space? And are there places in your life where you need to begin to expand the expression of who you are to take up your right place in the cosmic plan? Because if you're not being big enough, if you're not trusting source enough to nurture you and sustain you and take care of you in assuming you're a right place in the cosmic plan, you're actually going to be burning yourself out playing small. And I know that sounds so counterintuitive, but I'll tell you that one of the places where I see my clients burn themselves out the most is not in playing so big that they can't keep up and they burn themselves out. They actually burn themselves out by playing small, by not assuming the full expression of their right place in the cosmic plan. So here's some questions, some contemplative questions I'm going to leave you with this hour, after the end of this hour. And these are questions that I encourage you to take with you into contemplative meditation, take with you on a contemplative walk. You can write these questions down on a 3x5 card and read them before you go to sleep and dream on them. These are questions you can journal about, but I invite you to really explore in the context of integrity what needs to be healed, released, aligned, and brought to awareness for you to fully express your value. We have actually a custom line of custom blended essential oils that are designed to support you in activating some of the themes we've talked about today. There is an oil that is called Self-Worth that is a really great oil for you to work with that helps you set a really strong, helps you strengthen your subtle body energy field. so that you can begin to make shifts and changes within the shift and changes of that subtle body template. Another good oil for you to think about using is also empowerment, because sometimes we need to counteract the sense of powerlessness that we have in response to, in some way or shape or form, feeling traumatized. The other thing that I encourage you to explore through your writing or through your contemplative practice or through a meditative walk or even in dialogue with your friends, hopefully you've got some really great friends that are there with you on this one, is how would your life be different if you fully expressed and experienced your true value? What different choices would you make? What different language would you use? How would you talk about yourself? How would you show up in your life? What space in your life would you allow yourself to occupy if you were more alignment with your true value? And I want you to make a commitment to yourself. By the end of the day, you can think on this a little bit, but by the end of the day, I'd love to see you make a commitment to yourself to take at least one bold act that would be about expressing your authentic self. That can be something as small as choosing an outfit that feels really fun and powerful and delightful and comfortable and beautiful to wear. That can be something as choosing to eat something you really want to eat. That can be saying something that you really want to say, or saying something to yourself even. Maybe you need to hear from yourself. So what is one bold act that you can take today to express your authentic self? And think about this act in the context of self-management, self-generosity, humility, and honor. How can you take a bold act that's honoring of who you are, that allows you to move into a more self-managed expression of yourself? How can you take an act that allows you to take up your right place? And how can you, use language that really matches the preciousness of who you truly are? Be well, take care, have a great weekend. Bye.